Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. My name's Craig Story. I'm UDI lead for Kodit, and I've been asked to present a high-level overview of UDI, the challenges it presents. So this morning on this webinar, I'm briefly just going to cover UDI in general, the FDA rule, the NHS rule, and a little bit about the different data challenges that this is going to present to you. So if we start off with what is UDI compliance, just to clarify, it's compliant labels with GS1 barcoding for all products and packaging levels, produce a set of data for each product and package, and then send that data to a national database to be approved. And once you've done those two things, you've achieved compliance. Ongoing, of course, it's keeping the data compliant as rules are changed or you change your data, and keeping your labels compliant, again, as rules are updated or you make changes to your existing data. In regards to the cost of compliance, I think it's well worth just looking at the figures in front of you here. The FDA estimates there's around 14,500 medical device manufacturers with processes affected, and they put the cost at somewhere at $300 million for the US and some $230 million for the rest of the world, plus or minus 50%. So it is a significant new cost for all medical device manufacturers to have to deal with. So if we start with compliance for the USA, the Federal Drug Administration rule requires all medical devices sold in the US to adhere to labeling. I'm going to start here with GS1, and also provide a set of data attributes to what they call the GUDID. Please always bear in mind also that large US group purchasing organizations, Kaiser Permanente Med Assets, have also published their own requirements which go far in excess of the FDA database. They essentially want manufacturers, if you supply to them, to deliver data to them via a certified GS1 data pool provider. In regards to timelines to compliance, Class 3 devices are already compliant by 2014. Class 1 and 2 life-saving by October this year. And then the main group is going to be the Class 2 organizations by September the 24th, 2016, with the Class 1 and the remainder by 2018 for labeling and for database. And then if you are involved in direct marketing, you have until 2020 to fully comply. So by the end of September 2020, all medical devices by all classes need to have complied to the FDA UDI rule. Although the FDA has got published compliance dates, we have seen group purchasing organizations and indeed large US distributors demanding compliance from their manufacturers in advance of the FDA timeline. So just a word of warning, please, when considering your UDI project, do not rely on the FDA timeline only. In regards to an FDA compliant label, there's three main things to consider. The date format for the FDA must be YYYY-MM-DD when printed. If data and labels do not match, there's potential product recall. Barcode must be compliant to GS1 standards. They're the three main things to consider when you're looking at an FDA compliant label. The rest of the images, of course, are your own ISO images. There's two main areas on the label, what they call the device identifier, which is mandatory, normally a GTIN that identifies you as the labeler, and what they call product information, product identifier, that's the variable information that you would put on a label, lot number, batch number, expiration date, etc. So to recap, in order to be compliant, the data on the label must match data sent to the GUDID. The date format must be printed YYYY-MM-DD, and the GS1 barcode must meet all GS1 standards. So the data must be encoded with the correct application identifiers, the size of the barcode, any quiet zones, and the verification grade must be C or better. If you're using 2D barcodes, you'll probably need a 300 dpi printer, and please do remember the quality of the label, failure of the label and or data not matching may result in a very expensive product recall. One further very important point is updating the GUDID. Under 21 CFR rules, the labeler must update the GUDID when any information changes. It has to be done as soon as information goes on the label, or if the information is not on the label, within 10 days of you making that business change. Please do bear these two things in mind as you move forward and data starts to change within your system. I'd now like to move on to an FDA compliant data set. You can see in front of you here, this is the latest data set as of May of this year. There will be further updates in 2016. The FDA has its own lists of values which don't match with the FDA, but we will come on to that later on in this webinar. So there are up to 62 fields. Some of them are auto-populated by the FDA. Some of them have multiple values. But again, we'll cover that in a little bit more depth slightly later on. So to summarize the FDA, we have the timelines, its labeling and data. If you sell either directly or through distribution, you have no choice but to comply. And if you don't comply, then you will put the ability to continue to sell your products at risk. That's the message that's coming out from the FDA. Having talked about the FDA compliance, we're now going to move on to what this means for NHS e-procurement policy, which some of you may be aware of. And the next few slides will cover this in greater detail. The NHS e-procurement strategy is mandatory. And not only is it product data, it also includes price data. It's mandatory, and data can only be sent through a GS1 certified data pool. I think it's important to note the Department of Health changed the terms of contract. They were altered in 2013, mandated that suppliers must use the data pool, as just mentioned, but also providers must comply with the e-procurement rule. So this has been legalized by the changes to the two major contracts with the NHS. As with the FDA rule, the NHS e-procurement requires all medical devices to adhere to GS1 labeling, but also the data attributes must be sent to a national PIM system via a data pool. And in addition, suppliers must use what they call the Pan-European Public Online PEPOL system to receive and send orders electronically. These are the main things that are mandated by the NHS e-procurement. In regards to timelines, it will be phased in over a number of years. Medical devices come first, approximately 25,000. But over the following years, the NHS is going to expand the e-procurement to all suppliers of all products and services that can be purchased by a health provider in the United Kingdom. The four main things again: GS1 data pool is mandatory, GS1 labeling, GMDN, and PEPOL. So vastly different and much greater in scope than the pure FDA GUDID rule. In regards to timelines for compliance, the Department of Health will not be asking for compliance in advance of FDA timelines. And also the current data set that they published is the minimum requirement. Again, we're looking for them to expand on the data set as the NHS e-procurement strategy develops over time. So the Department of Health are expecting all medical device manufacturers to join GS1, complete a baseline questionnaire, allocate GTINs and GLNs, start collecting the data set, establish internal publication processes in line with FDA timelines. And from the labeling point of view, in the same timeline as the FDA timelines, using, of course, EU product classifications instead of US classifications. In regards to PEPOL, it's a staged implementation, but by December 2018, they're looking for all suppliers to have joined PEPOL and be sending and receiving PEPOL e-invoices. Do bear in mind that if you can do this in advance, there will be trusts that are looking to start trading with people well in advance of the Department of Health timelines. The data pool The product publication, they're looking for around December 16, again staged probably up to December 2018, depending on the class of your devices. So if we just go back and look at the FDA requirements and timeline, you can see how the NHSC procurement, it won't be in advance, but that by the time we get to around the end of 2018, there will be pretty much in harmony. So all suppliers will have completed FDA and NHS. I'd now like to spend a little bit more time on the actual data set itself. The FDA's got up to 62 data attributes. The American GPO is up to 90. The NHS is up to 95 data attributes, plus 27 price attributes. So the NHS data set is by far the biggest one. And within this data set, there are some common attributes like GTINs, but also each GUDID, each rule does have their own requirements and frequency of updates. So keeping the data or keeping abreast of the requirements and keeping your data up to date is what we believe is going to be the main issue for most suppliers moving forward. So just going back to the FDA compliant data set, you'll see there's up to 62 fields here. Some of them are auto-populated, some of them are maybe multiple values, some of them are from fixed lookup values or choices that the FDA have published, methods of sterilization, this kind of thing. When we look at the FDA data fields, the fields you see in front of you, we call these the magic fields. These are fields that once you publish them in the GUDID solution system, you can never change them. So if you make a mistake on these and they're published, then you have to start all over again. So pay particular attention to these fields. We have found brand name is one where the information that may be in an ERP is an amalgamation of information. And we have seen quite a few companies publish information in brand name, which is more probably in product description. And so they've had to go back and they've had to start again. So do please keep these key fields in mind. The next 2 or 3 slides, we're going to talk about the NHS compliant data set. As you can see, it's far in excess of the FDA. These are what they call the GDSN mandatory fields that you'll need for each base package. Some of them you'll also need for each level of packaging. And this is the minimum set of data that you have to use in order to send the data via a GS1 data pool. In addition to the GDSN mandatory fields, this is a set of the Department of Health generic fields that they also require. Again, these are required for all base packages, and some of these fields are also required for each level of packaging hierarchy. This is a final set of data fields required by the NHS. Again, some of these fields are for base packages, and some of these fields are also required for each package level. So that's the NHS dataset. You can see it's different totally from the FDA. There are some commonalities, but it does have a lot more requirements than just the FDA GUDID. In addition to the data fields for the NHS, it also depends how the product is supplied. If you sell directly as a manufacturer, brand owner, you're responsible for all of the data. However, if you sell through distribution, then the distributor is also responsible for part of the information and for publishing that information to the national PIM. So there are some scenarios that have been published on that, and again, we can make those available to you. So just a little bit further on that, if you are the brand owner, the manufacturer, you supply directly, you're the contracted for the goods, then you're responsible for the data, the labeling, submission of the data to the data pool, providing the pricing information, and also be in a position to receive purchase orders from NHS buying organisations and issue invoices via the PEPL system. In this supply scenario here, the manufacturer is the brand owner. They have to provide the product set to the distributor through the GS1 data pool. The manufacturer is also responsible for the labeling. However, it's the distributor who has to provide the product data to the NHS via a data pool. The distributor who provides the pricing data to the NHS through the data pool, and the distributor who receives all invoices via PEPL. In regards to the EU UDI rule, it hasn't yet been formally published. The fields will be somewhat similar to the NHS and the FDA. We'll be updating users on the EU rule as soon as we get the draft, which should be sometime in the next 30 to 60 days. So in summary, we have different organizations demanding compliance with different data attributes, different timelines and business rules as to how to achieve and then maintain compliance over time. So it is a big project. They will update on a regular basis. So the key is to understand, specify, develop, test and validate systems, and then keep them updated as the rules change over time. Data pool, GMDN, GS1 and PEPL will be mandatory for the NHS and for Europe, we believe. So it is a huge challenge. Having helped many companies go through UDI compliance, what I'd like to do now is just cover some suggested very, very brief steps that you should be looking at as you start your UDI compliance projects over the coming weeks and months. So the first things to do for compliance is to join the relevant organizations. Dun & Bradstreet for the DUNS numbers, GS1 for your codes, GMDN for the codes for your products. Data pool membership, we can provide that. And also PEPL, we're a PEPL access point. So you can join a PEPL access point, but you won't actually have to do anything with PEPL for the next 2 to 3 months. But join the organizations first, get that information into your systems. Once you have your GS1 numbers, identify what is a base package, allocate a number to that base package, and then look to start placing that on device labeling, review, redesign labels for the date formats, etc. And then the biggest job is to identify, collect, and validate the core data set. We would recommend that these work streams should, wherever possible, be done in parallel. In regards to the data you're going to require for GUDID, for UDI, where is that data going to be? Some of it will be in XML spreadsheets, some of it will be in paper, some in ERP systems. And even if you do have the data, it's not necessarily that the data is going to be in the correct format for sending to the IDs. So gathering this data together is the longest job that you will have for UDI compliance. So in regards to the data compliance, very, very high level again. First, understand the data that you need and the constraints for each attribute. Internally, find out where it is, who holds it, who has responsibility for change control. Start with one base product and packaging levels. As you find each data attribute, identify, add it to your master data repository. Once you have a single record is completed, review it, approve it, and have the data set then put under strict change control. So what we've done for our clients at Kodit is we have the master data repository is in the cloud. Data is fed in from ERPs, PLMs, and then from the cloud solution, the data is reviewed and approved, and then that data is automatically transmitted via the data pools to the FDA, the NHS, and even if required, down to the printers themselves. In order to help companies with UDI, we've assembled a series of partnerships. Fujitsu provide our ISO 27000 cloud. IBM is our global PEPL provider. One World Sync, which is owned by GS1 US and GS1 Germany, provides the data pool. And Zebra and others provide any advice on print hardware, labeling, etc. to help you with each aspect of UDI compliance. And finally, I know we've covered an awful lot of detail in a very brief period of time. I hope you found it of use, and we're now going to open up the question and answer session. So please do start to ask us any questions you have on any of the topics that we've covered in this webinar. Many thanks.